I didn't actually know that you was allowed to say no or no thank you to the things that you don't actually want. And anytime someone would come to me with a question that I really wanted to say no to, I'd get this feeling of, oh, I really want to say no here, but... And we never usually answer that question, but for me, it was, but I want this person to like me. I don't want them to think I'm being a bitch. I don't want them to think it's got anything to do with them. You know, I'm just overwhelmed and overstimulated now, and no, I really don't want to come to your house or come to your party. And anytime I did say no, you know, somebody usually threw a bitch fit and then gave me the silent treatment. So I didn't want to have to go through that again, because I didn't know that everyone would react differently to a boundary. People who have really good boundaries understand and see your boundaries, and they say, okay, no worries. But people who don't have boundaries and struggle with it can't take a boundary from you because they don't have any boundaries. They can't pick up on the cues that you're giving them for your boundaries. Like when someone has been at your house too long and you kind of know it's time for them to go, and you start like tidying around, or you go, right, if you're from Britain, and they don't pick up on that cue that it's time for them to leave, they don't have boundaries. I never had any personal space because I'd say yes to everything, because sometimes it's easier to say yes than it is to say no. But then I would end up exhausted, resenting people, getting mad at others for my own lack of boundaries. The lack of my own ability to say no. No, thank you. No, I don't want to do that. No, that's just not for me. That's just not my vibe. And as simple as it sounds to say no, it's actually a really difficult thing. Boundaries create freedom for you. It's one of the reasons I have yes tattooed on my throat. There's many reasons I have this tattoo. One of them is to remind me that a boundary might be a no to someone else, but it's a yes to me. Boundaries create the freedom for you to do whatever the fuck you want to do now, because you've got the time to do it. Just because you saying no thank you to someone doesn't mean you're a bitch. They might call you a bitch, they might throw a bitch fit, that's fine. That's, now you know that they have a boundary problem. Their feelings are not your responsibility. Nobody makes you feel a certain way. So if you say no thank you to someone, I don't want to come to your house or your party or for a walk, out for drinks after work. No thank you is a very sufficient answer, and don't elaborate unless they ask. And you can say, I just don't want to. I'm just not in the mood today. Try not to lie, but just say, I'm just not feeling it. I'd rather go home and relax, have a bath. But codependency and lack of boundaries go really hand in hand, and this was my whole life until I learnt about this. This is now why I teach about it so loudly, because I want people to be able to have their own boundaries. You need to feel the freedom you have when you're able to set a boundary, and the pride in your chest of, yes, I can say no and it doesn't affect me. But when we are codependent and a people pleaser, which is why we have that lack of boundaries, we end up taking on everyone else's problems, saying yes where you really want to say no, being worried that if we say no to this person, they'll blow up on us and hate us and not want to be our friend anymore and never talk to us again. Oh, well, good, because if that happens, you're clearing out the weeds from your life. Do you really want this person in your life, somebody that you can never say no to? It's always easier to set a boundary with somebody you don't really know or you don't really like, but it's a bit harder to set one with a friend who you want to stay friends with. Great friends will respect your boundaries with zero emotional attachment. But when somebody doesn't know they have a boundary problem, usually they'll always blame the other person. If they're willing and open to it, you can explain to them that I'm saying no because I need to say yes to me right now. I need to go have some time for myself. I need to be able to say no to the things I don't want, so then I do have time and energy to say yes to the things that I do want to do. Use the analogy of a screen door with boundaries. When you have no boundaries, your door's wide open for all the bugs to come in, for people to walk mud all the way through your house. This is what it feels like when you've got no boundaries. But when you do say no thank you, and you put the screen on the door, you still let the breeze in, the good people, the good opportunities, the things that you want, but you keep the bugs out and you keep the mud and the dirt out, the people you don't want to spend time with, the opportunities you want to say no to. But when somebody's not used to getting a no from you, because we've said yes our whole life, and you finally say no and put that screen up, they're going to walk headfirst into that screen and be like, who put this fucking screen here? And try and tear it down. This is not a sign for you to take down that screen and then say yes. If they're at the other side of that screen fighting with it, throwing a bitch fit, let them. It's their lack of boundaries for why they can't take your boundary. If you've said no, they've thrown a bitch fit, they've called you a bitch, they've thrown a tantrum, whatever it is. Phase 2 is then mental boundaries, not letting someone else's shitty attitude ruin your day. You have every right to say no to the things that you do not want. You don't owe anybody an explanation, and especially not yourself. If you feel it in your body that it's a no, it's a no. That's okay. But if somebody has thrown a bitch fit, we use the phrase, isn't it wonderful? And I learnt this from one of my teachers, because this is appreciations which are a step higher than gratitude, because gratitude can be comparable. At least I have this and they don't. But appreciations are, isn't it wonderful that I have the strength to set a boundary? Isn't it wonderful I can say no when I want to say no? Isn't it wonderful I now have all this time for myself to do whatever the fuck I want to do and not what someone else wants me to do? Isn't it wonderful I'm learning how to set a boundary? Isn't it wonderful that I've been shown that this person doesn't respect me and my boundaries? Isn't it wonderful I do have people in my life who respect boundaries? Etc, etc. Go and draft 10 sentences that start with, isn't it wonderful? And by the 10th one, you'll forget that they threw a bitch fit. Because if you are in your mind all day about how they are wrong and how they can't take a boundary and you're better than them and they've never done anything for you, you might as well have invited them in. Right? Where in your life are you finding that it's easier to say yes than say no, but it's making you miserable and it's draining your energy? This is exactly the place to go and practice setting boundaries straight away. And if that person can't take it, they're not supposed to be in your life. That's okay. You have every right to say no to the things that you don't want to do, that you don't like, that don't light you up. So comment any questions you have below and I'll come back and answer them for you.